Lacrosse community, my name's Ryan Berns. I'm the founder of the Lacrosse Leadership Institute. It's our mission to empower all those that love lacrosse, to recognize the skills that you gain from the sport, and ultimately live the life of your dreams. Today, we're joined by a lacrosse great, Marc Van Arsdale, who's going to share his story of how he got involved in lacrosse to where he is right now as one of the pinnacle coaches in the game with Loyola University. Marc, thank you so much for joining us today. For those in the community that don't know about your story, can you start by sharing how you got involved in lacrosse in the first place?
Sure. And Ryan, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity to share my story a little bit. But I first got involved in lacrosse when my family moved to Geneva, New York, and my father took a position as an administrator at Hobart College, which had an outstanding tradition of college lacrosse there. And one of the people that reported to him was Jerry Schmidt, who was the head lacrosse coach at the time. And Jerry's actually the only guy that was ever on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a lacrosse player. He was one of the all-time greats at Johns Hopkins. And Jerry came and gave me my first lacrosse stick and invited me to be a ball boy along with my older brother at the Hobart Lacrosse practices and games. And we would go to every practice in the spring, from, 5th grade, 8th grade. That was the highlight of my day was picking up that stick, which I had no idea what the game really was till I started doing this. And there wasn't a lot of involved organized youth lacrosse in the town, but my lacrosse was going and watching those guys that became my heroes, sort of those guys on the Hobart lacrosse team, and getting the opportunity to interact with Coach Schmidt. And actually his assistant at the time was Dave Urich, who was another lacrosse Hall of Famer, and was the longtime coach at Hobart for all those national championships, and then went and built the Georgetown program into something that I got to deal with tomorrow night when we play Georgetown at Loyola. But anyway, it was great exposure, being around a college campus and guys that were playing the game at a very high level. Those Hobart teams in the 1970s were, competing with the Cornells and Syracuses and winning their fair share of games.
Oh my gosh. Well, it sounds like lacrosse is something that you've just been a part of for so long, Marc. And I know it sounds like we got a big game coming up, and I know you're a 4-time national champion as well, right?
Yeah.
In your playing days?
Well, in the playing days, and then, not to put too much brag on it, but also was fortunate enough to play at Hobart. Then, I think the experience of being around those guys and seeing what that program meant, it was hard not to go there. My older brother had gone there, and he was, one of the, all-time greats in Hobart's history, is probably one of the best goalies to ever play lacrosse. And so I got 4 championships as a player there, then won 4 as a coach there, and, been fortunate to win 3 more at Virginia as an assistant coach to Dom Starzia. So, but I would also tell you that those aren't necessarily the biggest highlights of the game, but they're pretty close.
Well, I know stats can be a highlight from the outside, but it sounds like maybe you have some different personal highlights over your career. What really sticks out in terms of pinnacle moments to you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a single moment or moments, but experiences, I would say. One would be that, and I never thought I'd top it, the opportunity to play with my brother in college on great teams. And lacrosse has become such a family thing, even though my parents were never, really exposed to it. They became, huge lifelong fans, and along with my sister following the 2 of us. But getting a chance to play on a team in college and go to school with my brother was just probably the pinnacle playing experience for me. And I thought that would be a tough one to top at any point. And, it continues to be, even 30, 35 years later, one of those really pinnacle moments that keeps growing, because I think it has helped cement our relationship. The people that we're close to are the same people, and a lot of those things has made that great. And then, a bunch of years later, fast forward, probably the other one, and again, so much of this becomes about family, was the opportunity to coach my son at the University of Virginia. And, so when Owen was able to play there, in his freshman year, the team won a national championship, and, but being able to be experiencing that with him on a daily basis, I'm sure he would say there were trying moments, not always easy, playing for your dad, but to me, those are the things that stand out the most, And then the other piece would just be all the great relationships with the quality people you've had through the sport. And again, those two things probably stand out the most to me, because relationally, the family has always been the most important thing to me.
Mark, it sounds like the family's the most important thing. So the ability to play with your brother and then be a part of your son's playing career where he gets a pinnacle national championship. Sounds like those are really the things that stick out most to you, as well as other relationships that you grow over the course of this amazing sport.
Yeah, and I would say, it's just become a thing that probably my daughter would probably say too much lacrosse and family involved, but she was also her brother's biggest fan, and she currently works for the Harlem Lacrosse program. She's in her 4th year as a program director for Harlem Lacrosse, which is what my son had done until for 5 years when he first graduated, and now has gone on. My wife was an All-American lacrosse player in college and coached high school and youth and all those things. So it's really been something that you haven't really separated family and lacrosse. They've been so intertwined, basically ever since I first got that stick from Coach Schmidt.
I think that's so neat that they can stay combined, and it can be the backbone of a family or an individual's success. And that's something that I've noticed, and that's why we started this conversation. And I really like to highlight the leadership skills that are gained from lacrosse. Can you share what leadership means to you?
Yeah, first and foremost, to me, I think a great leader or a leader just is a great model, in terms of how you go about your business, how you behave. So the number one piece to me in leadership is always, setting that example and providing people with how things should be done. But then I think closely related to that is when a leader sees things not going, is having the courage to confront and correct, stuff that is not being done properly. So I think modeling first, and then, not tolerating or finding ways to bring that type of behavior that you want to see, and not tolerating makes it sound a little bit too stern to me in some ways. But helping others develop, and I think there's certainly a mentorship piece to that. Then, as you hopefully can help other people see what is the right thing, and getting, I think, the great leaders that I've been around have been able to, get individuals to give up maybe some of themselves for a greater good, and in my particular setting, it's for the team, but I think that translates to so many other realms.
So it sounds like a strong leader, someone who sets a really high standard, and they've got those core values, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. So they're not asking others to do something they're not comfortable with. But when they recognize someone isn't holding those same standards, they're willing to have a conversation and empathize with that individual to find a way to make them understand that it's for the greater of the team to ultimately hold the same high standards. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that is accurate, and then you see it, within teams. Obviously you have your coaches, but I think leaders on teams as captains or just players that are leaders. One of the really tough things I think for a young guy to do, for a high school player or a college player to do, is to call out his teammate in a way that isn't demeaning, and is not attacking them, but at the same time having that willingness to maybe do something that's unpopular, to step on the other side and say, what you're doing isn't right. You're my friend, it might be popular what you're doing, but it's not helping us. And those guys that can do that to their peers, I think, are, worth so much to teams, and they're difficult to find.
I think that's very spot on. It's difficult to find. Do you have any suggestions for any young lacrosse players, whether they're high school leaders or college leaders, in terms of how you can build that culture and build that skill of being able to connect with your teammates and ask for more?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. One is to seek help from people that have been through it, and it's one thing. We all vote on our captains, and if all you're going to do is hand out a piece of paper, and then those guys get elected, they're the captains, and now they're going to lead the stretching lines and go out for the handshake before the game. You're not really doing a whole lot for them. I mean, I think the captains need to be given some direction from, either older players that have gone before them, but also from the leadership in the institution. So I think it is something that you can try and build. I don't think you can just assume that these guys are just natural born leaders and they're going to do things right. And then also, just these conversations and I think that the biggest one is, are you willing to really commit to something and step out and go all out for this? And by that, I mean, sometimes somebody says they're committed if they know they're going to get something back, or I'm committed as long as this. You're not committed. If you're committed to something, the outcome or the results or what you're getting back don't matter. It's you're going all out and doing the right thing regardless of what the potential outcome could be. And it's no guarantees. I mean, you can do everything right as a team, and you can have great leadership, and in the end you may not get that win on the final day that you really wanted. Sports can be fickle that way, and the other team that maybe didn't do things the right way somehow found a way to get the victory on that day. But in terms of your growth and development and becoming all that you can become, you're achieving that.
And we can understand that leadership may be something that is learned or can be developed, and it starts by asking for help. It's asking coaches, it's asking for alumni who are previous captains, and them sharing that supporting hand so that these young men are able to start to bring in that team, that culture. If you look back over the course of your career and some of the teams that you've coached, have there been any individuals that have really just stuck out as natural born leaders, or anyone that's really developed into becoming a great leader? Who sticks out for you?
Yeah, there's a few guys over time. I mean, I would tell you on the teams that I played on, and again, it's a super biased perspective, but I would say my brother as a captain and a leader on a team from the time he was a freshman goalie was, just able to really get other guys focused in on what needed to be done. I still remember one time, one of our players were practicing in the gym, and a guy, sort of a freshman who was a good friend, and says, had a response to Coach Urich about when they asked to do something, and my brother just went right up to him and grabbed him by the neck, and maybe it's not the technique to use today, and jacked him against the wall and said, "That's not how we do things here." That guy has gone on to be an incredibly successful player in his college days, and successful father and businessman and things. But just having that kind of willingness to step up and say, this is how we do things, and this is the right way to go about it. Some of the other really good ones, I think Chris Rotelli, who played on the Virginia National Championship team in 2003, was the Tewaaraton winner. But Chris just had a way of making sure that ship was going the right way, and really had a manner about him that sometimes could be abrasive maybe, but was relatable to the guys along the way. And I know another one that gets a lot of attention from the Virginia folks. The 2011 team won it. There's a guy by the name of Bray Malfris, as defender, that had the eye black and the mohawk, and but really kept people in line. But I think what was lost on that team was his co-leader, John Haldy, is a guy that doesn't get a lot of credit. And John was sort of the quiet one behind the scenes that could go put an arm around somebody. He'd make sure you're doing things right, but you had that little balance to, sort of abrasive leadership style, and was able to kind of counterbalance that. And I think sometimes it does take different styles within a team, particularly teams as large as lacrosse teams, where you have, at the college level, 45 to 55 guys on a team. A lot of times it's not just going to be one guy or one style that is going to connect to an entire team. It's going to be multiple players taking on those leadership roles.
I think that's a very big point, because with so many individuals, there's so many different personalities as well. So if you can have that balance of leadership where you have someone who's really strong and in your face, and then someone who may be a little bit more cool and collected, so that they can touch on all of the players as a collective and make sure everyone has that buy-in, that's where we see diversity is such a big deal. And allowing to connect with individuals. Marc, for you guys and the teams, how do you create a culture that's inclusive and that really focuses on that growth mindset and doing the right things day in and day out, character-wise?
One of the great team building exercises that I've been involved with when I came to Loyola, and I'd never been with a team that took a retreat, but here every fall, and I think it's one of the things that this year's team, because of the whole pandemic situation, missed out on, and I think has left a little bit of a void for us. But we would go to a retreat center for a couple days, and guys are able to be away where they don't have to worry about anything. There's no competition for the playing time at that time. There's no worry about how am I doing on that school paper that I need to get turned in, or I got the anxiety that test coming up, or is she going to talk to me today when I walk into the dining hall and go sit next to her? Those kinds of, it's all out, and guys really open up, and and I think an important piece to that, and for any sort of team building is that it is very player driven. A lot of the themes for it come from them. I think the coaches can certainly step in and give some guidance. And here we also have, a Jesuit priest that works with our program that helps to develop some of those themes. But beyond that, I think that the players are the ones that come up with some of the topics that they want to explore and really just tell their stories. And I think that's a big part of team building and creating a culture is, and you mentioned the diversity aspect before, and our sport doesn't always have a ton of it, but even within teams that maybe aren't diverse on sort of the political labels or those kinds of things, but each kid brings a different story to the table, and as guys get to know each other and really know each other, I think it becomes much easier to connect and become leaders or followers and create the culture. And I think that's the big piece is once that culture is created and you can pass that on, you still need to pay attention to it, because it doesn't just happen by itself. After 3 months of the summer, you come back and you have this thing, it needs to be worked on consistently. And certain teams are going to have it better than others within programs, but hopefully you establish some consistency within your program that will allow that leadership to bloom and that team building to come together.
And for some reason, just tradition is what's coming to mind for me, is doing something that is able to be passed down from team to team to team. And whether it's that culture or it's the retreat or whatever it may be, that allows for some consistency. And in such a volatile time for these young men, this is sometimes the first time they've ever been on their own. They have responsibilities without their parents' support. They have to figure things out. And if you can look at an institution and know that there's tradition and there's a way that things are done, and that if you become a part of that you will see a similar result at the end, seems like something that can be really meaningful to a whole group of individuals.
I don't think there's any question about it. We all want to be connected to something greater than ourselves and be a part of. So I mean, I think that's one of the real attractions to team sports to so many young men. Certainly you play it for the fun and the joy and those things when you initially start playing, but I think you stay connected to it because you really like being part of a team. And why does so many, just quite frankly, you have these rosters of 50 guys, only on an average lacrosse game, 23 to 25 guys are getting on the field. What's keeping those other 25 connected, and it's these types of things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's really tough, because you need those last 20 people as well to make a whole team. And we always say that you're as strong as your weakest link, and without that commitment and without that drive from that 45th player, the team's not going to be as strong as those that do have all 45 guys just bought into the system, regardless of who's playing on game day. Marc, I've really appreciated your time, and I know we're coming up on it. Is there anything else you want to make sure that you're sharing with our community right now?
The only thing I would say is for as young people getting involved in the game is to love it first, and how do I get recruited? How do I do that? Forget that stuff. Learn to love the game and get some joy out of what you're doing, and make the stick your best friend. And I still will I know people are getting bigger, stronger, all these other things that happen, but the guy that has unbelievable stick skills because he just, can't take that stick out of his hand, I think is going to be someone that's going to be able to find his way. And just as importantly, by loving the game, you're going to be able to, get a lifetime of joy brought back from it.
And Marc, thank you so much for bringing that up. I think when you love the process, when you love this game, it becomes so intertwined in everything that you do. You have relationships that last your entire life. We get conversations like this because of a love for the game. So Marc, thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your story and perspective on lacrosse and leadership. We really appreciate you.
My pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.